All right, guys. No, it's been a while. I want to give everybody a little bit of an update on what's going on with the car. Lots of big news, kind of how the tune's going. I do want to start off with that anybody who does YouTube seriously, like puts a lot of effort into doing editing, making sure they've got good content and really putting the effort, putting out videos all the time, and has a full-time job. Huge props to those guys, because you got to think, they got a full-time job where they're working 40, 50 hours, call it an hour a day to and from with drive time, just normal life stuff to try to take the time out of their days to do all this kind of stuff and get it out there. It's a lot of work. It's tough. I had a lot of new people subscribe and watch my videos in January, so that made me kind of excited to say, hey, okay, somebody's at least interested in seeing what's going on with the car. So we'll talk about the tune. I'm not going to badmouth the company that tuned it. If you watch the other videos, you know who that company is. It was a remote tune. Overall, in boost, it's been really good. Air fuel was spot on. It's making good power. All the boost control stuff's really dialed in well. Drivability was kind of bad. I had a local friend who used to own a shop here in Kansas City that kind of did a little bit of a street tune on it before I went to the other place for the E-tune. And I will admit, like, the drivability was light years better. No bucking, better air fuels. And then the other guys that did the E-tune, he was telling me that, well, I've got 2200cc injectors in this. There's nothing I can do to make those better. I was getting a lot of fuel correction swings that I talked about. I luckily for me, and this may not be the case for everybody, I'm a little bit familiar with Hyundai stuff, more with the S300, but at least I kind of know how to navigate through some things. And I was able to go in there and set the corrections. Instead of giving a plus or minus 20% swing, I've got a plus or minus 5% swing. So that keeps it from getting into that rhythm where it's getting way out of whack. Another issue that I had, this car was originally tuned in July. It was about 100 degrees outside whenever I was doing all that. So then fast forward to fall. November, I go to a Cars and Coffee 30 minutes from here out in Overland Park. And I actually had to bring thank God I brought my laptop, because I went and started getting on it a little bit. Well, that day was probably in about mid to upper 30s, and air fuel was upper 12s, which, again, if you aren't somebody capable of cleaning up your tune yourself, really dangerous for the engine. You start getting in detonation issues when you start getting that lean on these kinds of setups. You can get away with it a little bit, but if you were just gonna be like, I'm just gonna send it, it's done, you probably pop your motor. What I found in there is that the intake air temperature corrections were basically nothing. So as the air temperature outside got cooler, the motor wasn't able to compensate, or the tune wasn't able to compensate for that cooler, denser air, which really kind of led to some concerning issues. So, bottom line is, if you don't have a tuner local to you that you don't trust, doing an E-tune's fine. Just know that it's going to take a lot longer than it would be if you just took it to a shop. Getting this car tuned, it's a stock motor, it's a basic setup. 6262 on a K24A2, just stock everything. Like, it's really nothing too complicated that most shops aren't going to have seen. You'd get it tuned in 2 to 3 hours. The whole process of this getting tuned through an E-tune, that took almost a month, because you have to think, I had 14 revisions plus a couple little tries to adjust fuel pressure to maybe get the actual injected duty cycle up, so there's a little bit more tunability to kind of take care of that driving and low throttle stuff. It took a long time, because every time you got to do it, you got to start the car up, you got to do a log, you got to go out and drive it, do a log of that, and then come home, send it out, and then the next day you might get an updated tune to go out and do the same thing over and over and over again. So anyway, that's it for how the tune's going. Right now, car is solid, about 10 and a half, 11 pounds of boost. It runs really well. So on to the next thing. You may be able to tell, maybe not, the car is super dusty. So I did something really, I think, looks awesome, looks really cool. This generation of Hondas, and the stuff going back before that, if they sat out in the sun, lots of clear coat issues. This car had clear coat issues. The hood looked like crap. I could have taken it somewhere, had them paint it, but then I was afraid color matching issues. How much is it going to cost? Is it going to look the way I want it to look? So I decided to take another route. So I'm going to grab you. I'm going to show you what I did. All right. So what I did is what's called forged carbon fiber. So I sanded down the stock hood and got through all the paint, not down to bare metal, but just basically got through all the clear coat, got rid of all the rough spots and whatnot. Bought some chopped carbon fiber from online, some resin, and spent on and off about a week in the garage sanding like crazy, using a dual action to kind of knock all this stuff down. I don't know if it comes through in the video, but the depth of this forged carbon is just cool. I think it actually looks, in my opinion, almost better than an actual carbon. It is something that's really popular. A lot of the new supercars, Lambos, Ferraris, and even McLarens, I think, are kind of doing some of this forged carbon pieces in the interior, maybe on like some spoilers, wings, and whatnot. But then I went over it and I did some 2K clear on top, and it just turned out awesome. So the roof also has some chipping clear from whenever the previous owner had the windshield replaced. They pulled the tape and it pulled the clear coat off. So I might actually do this same thing to the roof as well. Maybe the wing back there to kind of tie in the whole center section of the car with that look. Now I get it, kind of a ricer mod, whatever. I think it looks significantly better than the peeled clear coat and then the roughness and just the nastiness that was on there. And the risks of what I was going to go through and get it painted, I just thought this was a good option. So hopefully it holds up well. Hopefully it continues to look this way. Putting the 2K clear on it gives it some UV protection. So it should stay looking good for a really long time. It did add a couple of pounds to the hood, but I mean, it's not a race car. It's just a fun street car, and that's kind of it. So on to the other really interesting changes. This car does have a flex sensor. They're actually building a Casey's near me that, if it's anything like the one they built about 15-20 minutes from my house, it's going to have a E85. So I've been thinking getting this put on flex, put it on E85, turn the boost up 5 or 6 pounds, 15, 16 pounds, and then make somewhere hopefully in the low-ish 500s. Well, if you know anything about these transmissions, you know that pushing it much above 400 on a turbo, even 300 on an NA car, is kind of pushing your luck. So there's a good chance you might, grenade the transmission. So I've got a fix for that. All right. So the fix for that is going to be a BF Gearset. I was able to pick this up on Black Friday for a pretty good deal. They do charge shipping and taxes, flat rate shipping, $50, taxes, which on interstate sales is a little funky. I think that's kind of them sneaking in a little bit of extra cash. But this is their drag set. I went with BF because they've got a better first gear ratio than some of those other gear sets out there. This is a synchro set too, so it does have all new carbon synchros from Synchrotech. New bearings. I did do a different fifth gear in it, so it's going to have a little bit longer cruising fifth. So that's going to be awesome. I won't have to worry about the transmission braking. And man, if you just look at this thing, look at that 4.5, the difference in the size of those gears. This one being 4, this one being 5. Just massive, massive gears. So that thing should really be able to take some abuse. So hopefully, here in the next couple of weeks, I'll be getting the transmission dropped out of this thing, get all this moved over. I plan on doing a video kind of going over some of the more finite details that not a lot of people cover to make sure you don't screw them up. Checking your synchro clearance using the feeler gauges, how to check in play, how to check your differential shims, making sure all that stuff's tip top, because I do not want to go back through and pull this transmission again. I've already had a lot of issues with it, making a lot of whining noise because I didn't check all that stuff, but I got the factory service manual, so I'll post some screenshots of that in there. So that way everybody in the future can reference this video, that video, and be able to put together a transmission the right way. So Now I've got the transmission taken care of. Boost is going up. Next problem, traction. Well, I've got something for that too. So for traction issues, I think the EP3 and RSX chassis, they have their own issues with doing this, but we're gonna go all-wheel drive. So I've got an Element bell housing. I've already drilled out the speed sensor to basically a 1-inch hole and went through and cleaned all that up so it seals up nice and well. So I'll use the factory case, factory gear sets. I'm gonna have my M-Factory LSD modified to take the bolts through the top instead of through the bottom. Now where I said that the Elements, or I'm sorry, the EP3s and the RSXs have an advantage is they use all Element rear suspension. So I've got a set of Element knuckles, trailing arms, mount, all of that. Now its own set of issues is that it doesn't have a tunnel. Now luckily for me is I used to be a mechanic, welder, fabricator. Even as I got into engineering, sometimes it's easier, you know the saying, if you want it done right, do it yourself. So there were a lot of times instead of having to go through and try to explain things to maintenance guys to go through and do the welding and fabrication that I want done, it just made more sense for me to go in the back, chuck stuff up in the saw, get it all cut out, and then weld it up myself. So I have the ability to do all that. I've got a little 110 MIG welder here from Eastwood. I also have a TIG welder too. So I plan on making my own diff mount kit. Not kit, I'm not gonna sell it, but something for my car. It's probably gonna be kind of designed after the Odyssey Fab stuff. So I'm thinking about notching out that rear section of the subframe, putting in the piece of tube. I think that's gonna give the whole system a little bit more room in the back, because I know drive shafts for these are a little tight. You can get away using a stock Element drive shaft on the EP3, but you're right there. Like even the Gravy Built Racing, Hub City Performance, those kits, you can use the Element, but you are like within an inch of not being correct. I'm thinking if I give myself a little bit of space, because if you look online, Element drive shafts, they range within a couple inches of each other depending on which one you want to go out and buy. You can also get into the CRV drive shafts. The CRV drive shafts are actually a little bit larger diameter to me. They don't neck down like the Element stuff. Then as far as axles, it's I want to say it's the 2 driver side axles out of a CRV. But yeah, like I said, I've got the knuckles, I've got the trailing arms, I've got all that. I've got a good plan on how to take care of the fuel system too. So hopefully I can use the stock fuel pump assembly. Just using the Walbro 450 that I've got in there with the hydro mat fuel sock. But yeah, so hopefully lots of good stuff coming out with this here soon, and maybe come springtime it'll be a fun little street ripper. All right guys, stay tuned.